Large parts of Rafah are now all but empty. The UN says more than 1 million people have fled in 3 weeks, but enough remain to fall victim to Israel's ongoing incursion here. One of them is Ahmed Abu Atab. Today, he's in hospital in Khan Yunis. Yesterday, he was hit by shrapnel on the Rafah beach.
He said, "My aunt, I was looking for water. I went to bathe. I died. Here he is, he needs an operation. There are no capabilities, there are no doctors, there are only a few doctors. Even the doctors, they don't have any capabilities. Open the borders, let the medicine enter, let the doctors enter, let the ambulances in, let the children leave."
A day after Israeli tanks were seen in central areas of Rafah, the strikes have continued. Israel says it now controls the buffer zone there along the whole of the Egyptian border. The Israeli military says this video shows its troops still operating in the Jabalia refugee camp in Gaza's far north. Israel's national security advisor saying today the war will last another 7 months, the rest of this year at least. Little prospect then of a respite in time, precious little in space either, with hundreds of thousands seeking safety somewhere.
People don't have places to move their tents or making their own camps there inside Khan Yunis and Deir al-Balah. So it's a disaster, a humanitarian disaster on the level of finding the sheltering of these people.
Israel has denied it was responsible for striking the Mawasi humanitarian zone west of Rafah yesterday. The Palestinian Red Crescent Society says it's now dismantled its field hospital there.
It's almost impossible for humanitarian organizations struggling to get into Rafah, struggling to move people around Rafah, struggling to reach patients. The scale and the intensity of violence and insecurity that has been meted out against the Palestinian people is such that it is near impossible now to provide the essential medical and immediate humanitarian care that is needed to sustain life.
The scrutiny continues of the Israeli strike on Sunday that killed 2 Hamas commanders and sparked a blaze that killed dozens of civilians in a crowded tent encampment. Investigations by CNN and the New York Times have shown the bombs were US supplied, the relatively small 17-kilogram payload weapons whose increased use Washington had been calling for. Israel says it took precautionary measures, including aerial surveillance, to minimize civilian harm.
Importantly, when you're using a weapon that's intended to be precision, that's intended to be low collateral damage, that doesn't mean that you can just drop it on an area saturated with civilians and you're not going to have civilian casualties. And that's what happened here, unfortunately.
In Moldova, the US Secretary of State said he couldn't confirm that the bombs in question were American. So far, the Biden administration says Israel hasn't crossed its red lines in Rafah, but says it needs a strategy that maintains Israel's gains over Hamas.
And I think this underscores the imperative of having a plan for the day after, because in the absence of a plan for the day after, there won't be a day after.
With the Rafah border now sealed, another potential aid route has literally fallen to pieces. America's £250 million floating pier broke up in bad weather over the weekend and will take at least a week to be repaired once towed to a nearby Israeli port. American policy seems equally buffeted, urging Israel to plan for the day after, as the Israeli government says that day won't come before the end of the year.